The Minnesota Vikings have one key to beating the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's Brian Flores. We'll discuss why. We'll talk about how the Vikings can exploit Vic Fangio's defense and some interesting comments from earlier this week from Brian Flores talking about Javon Hargrave in run defense. We'll talk about all that and more here on another episode of X's and SKOLs.
X's and SKOLs with Tyler Forness and Luke Braun. Dissecting the All-22 for your Minnesota Vikings.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of X's and SKOLs. I am your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, on the left, host of Locked On Vikings. His name is Luke Braun, and producer Dave is in the background. Luke, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I feel a need to point out that I do not believe you are on the right microphone, my friend. We should fix that for the people.
Yep, I am not on the right microphone.
Doing great. I'll fill some airtime while you deal with that. We're talking Eagles. I went on an Eagles show the other day and defended the tush push, really pander to the opposing audience. Had a great crossover with Louis. He had some interesting things to say that I think play into the article you released, I believe, this morning about Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
That are probably worth mentioning. And there we are. Now it's silky smooth.
It's beautiful.
So we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I'm gonna blame Dave for the microphone issue because we've only really had that issue ever since he made me buy a Mac. So it is all Dave's fault. I give him grief about that all the time. But I want to start here because I think there's a lot to talk about with Hurts. There's a lot to talk about with how the Vikings can attack Vic Fangio defense. But we talked last week about Javon Hargrave and your theory that he was kind of being soft benched with the emergence of Jalen Redmond and he's getting more snaps than Hargrave. I don't necessarily think you're wrong, but I think these comments from Brian Flores during his Tuesday press conference are very interesting, and maybe it should prompt us to look at things in a little bit of a different way. Ben Gessling asked about all the attention that Hargrave is receiving when it comes to blockers. And the comments are as follows. He's a good player, so he gets a lot of attention. And I think as a whole, defensively, when we see that, how can we use that to our advantage? Who can we maybe sneak through if there's a lot of attention being paid to him to make them pay attention to somebody else? Essentially, that's the process we go through. I think it's no different than offensively if someone's getting double teamed and someone else has to get open, whether it's Hargrave, Allen, or Grenard. I think that happens from time to time. And when it does, we just try to, I don't say offset it, but make them think about another person so that we can free that player up again. But oftentimes they just go to think of stay on the one guy, and then which means somebody else has got. He also mentioned later on in that quote, which I didn't have in my piece, he kind of related it to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. And we both agree that he just gets washed out in run defense, but he still has the juice when it comes to winning those one-on-ones in rushing the passer. So my question for you is, are they just intentionally okay with him losing because that kind of springs up other guys with those double teams? Is that
maybe that's the theory, but it ain't working.
Yeah, I'm going to say that too. I think Blake Cashman is going to fix a lot of the run defense. Probably improve from like 25 to like 19. Like not as significant, but enough where you feel, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable with where this unit is at. I found it really interesting that he chose to kind of look at it as, okay, Hargrave's just getting bitched, essentially. How can we take advantage of that with other players? I found that to be a very fascinating answer.
Well, you know who the best guy for that kind of thing is? It's your favorite man. It's Ivan Pace. If you're going to make a bunch of big space, go shoot that space, right? Mm-hmm. And then you just kind of have to make the tackle. You have to have somebody else corralling that. So the idea of the D tackle gets double teamed and therefore you're using two players to my one and I have an advantage is kind of ancient technology. Yeah. I think this is cope. I think that your run defense is bad. This idea isn't working. If that is your idea to let your nose tackle get washed out at the point of attack so that other linebackers can clean up, it's not working. Everybody's hanging 100 yards on you. You probably need a different plan. And maybe that's what they were trying. I just remember like sitting there in the stands in Tottenham, watching that one drive with Quinshon Judkins, where they just like run. They marched it all the way down the field.
Mhm.
And it ended up in the Njoku touchdown. And I was like, what a demoralizing drive. And my dad and I were like, wait, where's Jonathan Allen? Oh, he's on the bench. Javon, that's Levi Drake and Redmond out there just getting smoked every single play because they're backups. And watching the Vikings just never throw this, like, in that situation where they have gotten, I think, 4 first downs in a row on the ground against you, and you're still not putting those guys out there, you don't think they can handle the run. That actions speak louder than words. I don't think that they think that those guys can handle the run. There's plenty of evidence for that. And I think you can levy that as a criticism in a whole bunch of ways about how much they spent or whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't really think there is a good way to get your D tackle washed out at the point of attack. You really want to keep the integrity of that line of scrimmage, keep that nice and even, make those gaps easy to read, and then the linebackers make the play. Or if it is going to be combo blocks, which is the majority of what you see now, it was zone and duo everywhere. Those D tackles need to be able to survive the double while it lasts. And then when someone climbs off to go get to the linebacker, you have to be able to win your one-on-one. And that's where Hargrave is getting killed. Like, one-on-one with like Isaac Seumalo, that's a good player, but you can't, I know he's good, but you can't let him do that to you one-on-one. If you're going to be an NFL D lineman and you're going to be one-on-one with the guard, you got to win that rep better than he won those reps. And Kenneth Gainwell has a career year or a career day against you. So I just, the soft benching thing is a hot take for sure. And I'm probably way too early to really be able to say that. And we'll see how the snap counts continue. And if those guys get more, or if maybe it was a load management thing because the international trip was hard, right? And maybe this doesn't, 3 weeks from now, we'll be like, oh no, Levi Drake was in for 4 reps a game and this was nonsense. But as it feels right now, I saw someone struggle a lot to do a thing and then not get put back in to get another chance to do the thing.
Yeah, I do think that your idea of this just kind of being cope makes a lot of sense, but it is smart for a defensive coordinator to kind of look, okay, this is what our reality is. Let's try to modify what we're doing to try and take advantage of what that is. So I think it's kind of a combination of both. They got to figure something out with Hargrave, and maybe it's just what we kind of thought going into the year was, okay, you're paying this guy average annual value of $15 million to be a pass rush specialist, which he has been very good in those situations. He's got 13 pressures and 2 sacks across his first 5 games, and he doesn't even have 100 pass rushes yet on the interior. He's winning quite a bit,
like crazy. Yeah. And so is that the deal with the devil that you made? We're going to get pressure, but we're going to suck in the run, which from like an EPA per play perspective has absolutely been worth it.
Oh, it absolutely has. I want to see more. And I think that's going to be something really interesting to watch for. I also have I wonder if they might look at the trade market and see if they can get a run stuffing nose tackle if they just can't kind of figure this out. I do think Cashman coming back is going to be a huge benefactor for them. But if they acquire you might be able to get a nose tackle for like a 6th round pick at the deadline, and just somebody who can be a anchor for you on early downs and just kind of fix what you lost with Harrison Phillips, and you don't have to necessarily take a large cap hit next year, which that was the whole idea of moving on from him. You save about $11.5 million.
You save a lot of money next year.
Yeah.
But the problem is you could have just done that in February, but
Yeah, you absolutely could have just done that in February, but let's just be real. They probably did it to keep Elijah Williams.
Yeah. And it's spilt milk at this point. I have a question for you, Tyler. This is not from the chat. This is from elsewhere, but it is a viewer. If one were to join Vikings First and SKOL as a member, would that support you?
Yes, it absolutely would.
Maybe everybody should do that who's watching.
I like
CTA,
that idea.
Baby.
And if you join, and then you join the Vikings First and SKOL Discord, you get access to the Rumor Mill channel. Whenever I hear something, I will share it in that channel, only for members of the YouTube channel. So you get an
Tyler scoops have gone.
You get an extra benefit. Yes. Well, I send them to you most of the time too. Just you. Nobody else.
What happens in our private chat doesn't need to be. We don't need the people to know that.
We don't need any tongs in there. Let's just be real.
I want to. There you go. Thank you, Magic. And I'm going to answer your question about Pace's issues, and then a couple other people who brought up like linebackers with this run defense thing.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this last time, but I'll repeat myself for anybody who missed it, which is if you're like, think about it spatially. If you're Javon Hargrave and you're getting washed 5 yards down the field, right? Now the space between that double team and the blocks next to you is huge, right? There's these big giant chasms for the running back to try to run through.
Mm-hmm.
Those gaps are still technically the responsibility of a linebacker, whether it's Eric Wilson or Ivan Pace or Blake Cashman. But it is so much harder to cover a linebacker or to cover a gap that has, that's a 4-yard chasm, and the running back can, use all that space, set up a juke, try to run through you, try to use their speed. They have so many tools. It's almost like making an open field tackle when the gaps have been that wide. That doesn't mean they didn't fail. That doesn't mean they don't get credited with, this run went up your gap or whatever. But there's a degree of difficulty to it that's different than if your D tackles can keep the whole thing clogged up with bodies, and all Ivan Pace has to do is park his shoulder pads in the gap. But when it's that wide, gaps that are properly fit and are covered and they did everything right, the defense is where they're supposed to be, a running back might still pick it and say, I know 55 is a backup and I think I can juke him. And then, go get 7 yards that way just by making the tackle one where he falls forward and or fighting through somebody small like Ivan Pace or whatever. Like that could happen with Barkley. If Barkley sees 0 in the fit and that fit is wide enough where there is no other bodies that are going to come help with that tackle, if I'm Barkley, I'm lowering my shoulder, right? I'm trying to hurdle that little dude. So it doesn't fully excuse. The linebacker play has been bad, and don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that everything is hunky dory there, and we really do want Cashman back, but it has been a lot more difficult than it should be because of the L's the D tackles are taking. It's like saying, hey, we kind of wish TJ Hawkinson brought in that pass, but you have to acknowledge that the pass was out of his frame and was difficult to bring in. And like add that to your assessment. That's my linebackers thing.
Yeah. And there's another caveat with this linebacker conversation, Luke. The more Eric Wilson plays, we may lose out on a compensatory pick. He is the 5th lowest qualifier for a compensatory free agent right now because he's played 77% of the snaps. So
how much did he make though?
2.6 is the number that they have. Plus, if he plays, well, this is the numbers from Over the Cap. If he plays 50% of the snaps on defense, he gets a $150,000 bonus, which then adds on to that number, and it compounds the formula. So if he just becomes a rotational guy and plays like 20% of the snaps, which is about what we've seen with some other linebackers in this defense, like 10 snaps a game, then he probably will not qualify as a compensatory free agent. And that can be a huge factor in the Vikings getting that extra 6th round pick, or maybe even a 4th, depending on what Cam Robinson does in Cleveland. So that's a factor.
There's a lot of moving parts to that. But obviously that's not going to factor in any decision making. They're not going to start throwing in like Kobe King just to save a comp pick. I don't think.
I don't think so either. And we saw last year that they prioritize these comp picks, but they're also not going to say no to a good player or play somebody else. Like they signed Shaq Griffin knowing that he was going to lose them a comp pick 2 weeks before the formula ended because they felt like they needed him in the building. And well, it turns out that they were kind of right about that. So
I believe that pick could have turned into Cam Scatterbo. Just saying.
Oh, man.
If we want to play that game. I see people do basically everything you say about like who they could have taken instead of Ty Felton also kind of applies to that.
I'm sorry. The answer is Quincy Riley. They should have taken Quincy Riley. I got asked in the YouTube instead of Ty Felton. I got asked him in the YouTube comments today, why didn't the Vikings trade up to go get Xavier Watts or not trade back? Because I can't remember what pick he was taken. It was around the end of round 3.
He fell pretty far. I didn't like him at all coming out. I don't think I can claim any regrets on that.
I didn't love him either, but I thought around that range it was a fair selection. And look, kudos to him. He's been really, really good for the Falcons. But it's too hard.
I missed pretty hard on safeties. I was right on Makuba.
Yeah,
but I did pretty bad on the rest of the safety. No, what am I talking about? Nick Emenwari has been like weird. but
He's
they're
only
also
played
all
2
young.
games,
So
but he looks
yeah,
really good in that role. He's kind of, I think he's playing the Kyle Hamilton role for Seattle because obviously it's a very
yeah.
similar structure with Mike McDonald.
Oh yeah, and that's like that's not yeah, it just never fit at all. That was the thing with both those guys too, that like in the Flores world, what Flores asks those two guys to do is way different than
Yeah,
what they're being asked to do now. So
absolutely. I want
it's
to
April
move
talk.
on. Yeah, oh, we're gonna have plenty of that. I want to move on to talk about the Minnesota Vikings on offense, going up against Vic Fangio, and we've seen so many people try and run the Vic Fangio scheme, and they're bad at it. Vic Fangio is good at it, and
Yeah, because he actually blitzes a normal amount.
yeah,
Blitz at a medium NFL amount, and the thing works. And for some reason, like Joe Barry and Donatel and all of these other like spin-offs don't do it. I don't get it.
the one guy who does do it is Jiro Evero, and that Panthers defense it's been a little up and down so far, but they blanked the
They
Falcons.
have
and
no
made them-
talent at all. They've got like J.C. Horn and like a dream, but
Derek Brown rules in the interior at least.
I always forget about him.
Old friend Pat Jones just went on IR for the season with a back injury, so
Yeah, bummer.
yeah, very big bummer. But I bring up Fangio because it's such an interesting defense, and it's not too dissimilar to Brian Flores. It is based a lot on deception, and they run a lot of like basic shell coverages, but they do a really good job of disguising and kind of moving pieces in and out. Where do you think the Vikings need to attack to be successful against this group?
Yeah, so I was asking Louis about this on the crossover. Louis DiBiase does Locked On Eagles, and they are so their edge group is like underwhelming, but always there's a lot of like surely this will be the week that Josh Uche breaks out kind of stuff. And Josh Uche's kind of been the crown jewel of an otherwise disappointing room, but I think the big thing is the secondary, right? Like they're banged up in the secondary, and they're not getting the year out of Adoree Jackson they hope to get. We'll see about Quinyon Mitchell if he's 100%, if he plays at all. He did return to practice, so it looks optimistic, but will he be banged up? But with a Fangio defense, and this is kind of the mistake that I think we make a lot going into games, and I do it too, where you focus on matchups and you go, ooh, Adoree Jackson versus Justin Jefferson. Remember the playoff game? And you talk about the matchup. Well, this is a zone defense. These guys play cover 6. You ain't getting matchups. You're getting space. And so that's the thing about the defense, the Fangio defense this year. They run, I think, the 28th most cover 2, and then like the 6th most cover 6. Everything else ranks around the middle of the league in terms of frequency, in terms of how much they go single high, double high, all that. It's just that in situations where you would usually play cover 2, they call 6 instead. This is exploitable, especially because I think we know where they're going to put the quarters and where they're going to put the half. If you remember from the Donatel years and what the Eagles did last time the Vikings played them, which was 2023, long time ago. A lot of things have changed in Philly since then. But they did a call in the Fangio system is called Zeus. Zeus, and then the number of the player that you're scared of. So Zeus 18 in this case. Or if you're up against the Bengals, it'd be Zeus 1. That means that the half side of cover 6, so cover 6 is cover 4 on one side, cover 2 on the other. Cover 2 side is on Justin Jefferson's side. Guarantees that there will always be safety help over the top of Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson motions across the formation, the coverage flips. That's how Zeus works. And then otherwise it's their regular cover 6 rules with 3 deep, 4 underneath. And the quarter side, that means that where that you will have quarters on the other side of Justin Jefferson all the time. What you can't do is something the Vikings love to do a lot with Jefferson, which is move him across the formation, which is the other point of this coverage, is because there's quarters opposite him, you have an inside quarter safety that can poach those and will probably and has that responsibility if Justin Jefferson comes across formation. So you can't do that. I mean, you can do that if you want to lure the safety, but you can't rely on that as a bit. Like one of the Vikings' favorite plays is wave, which is a bunch of crossing posts and deep crossers and stuff. That play doesn't work against this coverage. But you do have Jordan Addison and potentially an old Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, or banged up Quinyon Mitchell, and they play sides, so you know where those guys are going to be. and you probably know what coverage they're in if they're giving you their cover 6 tells, whatever you determine those to be in the week. So I would say if I'm going to attack them, you got to block them up, right? You got to protect for this. But I am running quarters beaters opposite Justin Jefferson all day long, and I'm trusting Jordan Addison and Jalen Nailor to get open against those zone coverages.
What about Yankee? Isn't that something that you can use against quarter half or in?
It's a cover 3 beater to me. But if you run it toward the half, so for those who don't know, Yankee is a post and then a deep crosser underneath the post, and the idea is versus cover 3, the middle safety is cut in half. He has to either take the post or the crosser, and you throw whichever one he doesn't take. I think if you have, because if you run the deep post from the half side, I wish I could draw this.
See, I was thinking you'd run the deep post from the quarter side,
from the quarter side toward the half, and then
run Justin Jefferson straight at that quarter safety. And
it would probably cut the guy in half the same way, huh? Yeah, that could work, and that's a bit of a rollout play too, if you want to move the pocket a little bit for Carson Wentz.
And then
if he's the one who plays.
And then you could, in theory, do. I want to say it's Mills, but Mills, you run the post and the dig on the same side. It's the concept that the Lions whipped us with Jamison Williams in his rookie year, where you've got a dig on one side and a backside post. I can't remember what concept it is, but it put Cam Bynum in conflict. And
oh yeah, what is that called? Somebody in the chat might know.
I can't remember what it's called, but I'm thinking that might be the beater too.
Yeah, it's kind of close to Yankee.
Yeah, Bynum jumped down, and then Williams had nobody within 10 yards.
Yeah, and then you had that busted. That was basically a busted coverage because he took all that cheese. Yeah,
and with
so those
so good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say those. So anything that's a quarters beater on that side. I want to say the first McCarthy touchdown was one of their favorite quarters beaters. On that, it was the one to Justin Jefferson in Chicago. That it's basically and that Jefferson route is kind of supposed to be a decoy. You just want to lure that. You just want to bring that inside safety further inside, because the outside safety in quarters is always going to over prioritize the out. He's got man outside and deep, so he is going to play outside leverage and stop you from running corner routes or whatever. So if you can get rid of his inside help and then run an in-breaker, you're going to have a lot of space.
Yeah, 100%. With that first touchdown that you mentioned, like, what concept was that? Because you basically had Nailor and
follow.
Yeah, it's a weird version of a follow concept, because I usually
double
see
post.
Follow. Yeah, it was just two dig routes essentially right next to each other, and Nailor. I think Nailor had the spacing wrong because Jefferson was super close to him, but it worked because McCarthy had space underneath him and fired an absolute piss missile, and it was great.
Yeah, nice low at the goal line, really nice. Yeah, it's either so it could have been double post, because they were in the high red, you run out of space, so you flatten out the post a little bit more. You can't run it like you would at the 50, or it could have been a concept that is follow, which is just like two dig routes kind of next to each other. That's specifically supposed to put a player in conflict. You either have to chase one or poach the other, and then the other one will be open.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued to see how they attack this Fangio defense. I just want to see Justin Jefferson against Keely Ringo and just run blaze outs on him all day. Because that dude,
you can get the single high.
That dude's hips turn like the Titanic. It's I remember we were talking about him when he came out, and like, this dude just can't play. He's got to be like a safety or something, because it's rough. It's really rough. But I want to shift the focus over to the Vikings on defense, because you mentioned it with Louis DiBiase earlier on Locked On Vikings, which you should all go listen to when you're done here. That look, it's no secret Jalen Hurts sucks against zone coverage right now. It feels like a comfort thing, and I don't know if he's not reading it properly, because in college, so much of his game was one read and then do stuff. He wasn't going through full progressions. He's a little bit better at it now, but let's just be real. He is a very systematic quarterback where you just have to maximize the strengths and just deal with the weaknesses. And right now, that weakness continues to be against zone. And I wrote an article earlier today for A to Z Sports, which you should all go check out. He has an EPA against zone coverage with a blitz of negative 0.32 expected points added per play. The Vikings.
You got to explain how insane that number is. That is, so we've been talking about McCarthy's EPA being really bad, and essentially 54 dropbacks, and 3 of them are interceptions. 1 that went back for 6. Right, that's bad EPA. That's negative 3.4. That's like we're to that level.
JJ McCarthy, the first 3 quarters of the Chicago Bears game, that kind of bad. The Vikings have run 44 plays with zone coverage with a blitz, and remember, blitz is quantified as 5 or more players on the pass rush, which the Vikings do a lot. And sometimes it doesn't feel like a blitz because it's just the 5 defensive linemen and edge rushers lined up on the line of scrimmage. And Brian Flores loves everybody. Negative 0.057 EPA per play allowed. That is worse than every quarterback so far this season. Worse than Jake Browning against the Vikings. Worse than Joe Flacco. It's bad. And here's a kicker, Luke, that I also had in the piece. The Eagles have faced by far the most 4-man exchange pressures. So the exchange pressure is you have Dallas Turner lined up, he bails. And they faced him on 20% of dropbacks this year per Cody Alexander's match quarters. The NFL average is 8.1%. That kind of pre and post snap designation, I think, has really made a huge impact on Hurts. Is there anything that they can do to help Hurts in this situation, or is he just going to get absolutely destroyed by Flores?
I mean, yeah, give him outlets, right? Get the ball to Saquon Barkley in space, let him cook. Or, whoever your shifty little twerp is that you like as your, I don't know who it is there. Is Dotson? Is he still in Philly?
Yeah, Dotson's the slot, and Will Shipley's like the third down back, if they use a third down back, because Saquon can do it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whoever you like, yeah, get him the hot, right? Get him some completions. But one of the things I noticed in your article too is on man blitzes, the ADOT doesn't change. The Eagles still are very comfortable, and Hurts is comfortable saying, here's the blitz, that's fine, this ball's going to be out in time, and basically going to where he would have gone anyways. And it's just a man coverage read now. But against zone, ADOT cuts in half. It goes from like 8 yards average depth of target, which is a reasonably deep 8. That's a pretty aggressive. To like 3.9, which is like less than any offense. Like that's pretty striking. That it really does seem like the Eagles don't have a comfortable answer to zone blitzes. Everybody has fire zone. Like Flores makes a living out of it, and that's unique about him, but everybody has it. And so if they haven't had that answer, and now they're going to go up against, this is the week, and they've had a mini bye to figure it out, and I'm sure that those coaches will have some kind of plan. I would be, if I were an Eagles fan, disappointed if they walked into that game saying, well, if they blitz, we'll just check it down and live to see another day, because then Brian Flores will never stop, and you will never, ever see another day.
So I want to dive into those yards per attempt numbers a little bit more. Zone coverage with no blitz on 76 dropbacks, 8.6 yards per attempt, but on 44 with the blitz drops to 4.6. The fascinating one with man coverage against the blitz, there are only 38 total reps of him going against man coverage with these dropbacks. And sorry, I'm looking at the Vikings numbers. The Vikings are on a game man coverage. They're only allowing 3.7 and 3.4 yards per attempt, but no blitz, it jumps 4 full yards from the blitz. Hurts, zone with a blitz, 4.69 yards per attempt. Zone with no blitz, 7.25. Man with a blitz, this one fascinated me. 8.58 yards per attempt. Man with no blitz, only 5.15. So it's almost...
Yeah. So they've got their man blitz beaters. And so you get this, like I was talking to Louis about it, and Louis was like, yeah, Hurts has been pretty good against the blitz. But he didn't specify what kind of blitz. And I think that is an awesome find you had in that article. That is the stat that really rewired my expectations for this game.
Yeah. I'm curious what the coverage plan is going to be against AJ Brown, because you have two very small corners, Isaiah Rodgers being very small, Byron Murphy being closer to 200 pounds, because Isaiah Rodgers is 5'10", 175. I'm curious if they just trot out Jeff Okudah, because AJ Brown isn't necessarily the quickest guy in the world, and with how Okudah plays, he might be able to handle some of those man coverage reps if they choose to run man coverage much at all against the Eagles. But he's got the size, length, and speed to be able to, in theory, handle some of that physicality. So what do you think the coverage plan will be as far as who lines up opposite of him?
I think, knowing what I now know about this game, the coverage plan is zone blitz all day, right? So I don't know how much man you get. With every defense will dabble in a little thing here or there all the time. I don't think the Vikings get to dictate the matchups very often. They usually play sides on their corner. You're going to have to be able to handle everybody a little bit. Yeah. Unless you really want to say, okay, Byron Murphy, you shadow Devonta Smith because you've got the size matchup. But Jeff Okudah, you shadow AJ Brown because of the size matchup. I don't know if I love the latter there. That one feels a little bit exploitable if you were going to do the shadow thing. And I really am kind of against shadowing unless you really, really trust those corners, which Isaiah Rodgers has had a nice season, but the Vikings are not playing like a team that they're not doing the Zimmer lock it off thing. They're zone covering, and that's what it's going to be. You're going to see, and that allows Josh Metellus to get involved in these. That allows linebackers to jump stuff. That allows safeties to come up and come off the roof and try to make a play, right? And then you're trying to create a little bit of chaos rather than, like, I think if you just stack up these rosters on paper, I don't think you're matching up with anybody. Like, I don't think you're matching up with the Eagles. I don't think you're saying, all right, Saquon Barkley, here's our answer to him. AJ Brown, here's their answer to him. That's too talented of a team. You have to find a way to create chaos and make plays happen that render it completely moot if you end up with Jeff Okudah one-on-one with AJ Brown and AJ Brown gets open, but it doesn't matter because you got the sack. That needs to be how you play this.
I posted the Jalen Hurts article on Reddit, and I got the funniest response.
Why would you do that?
Oh, that Reddit has been kind of nice to me every now and then, but it spreads my work, and I only do it with pieces that I really feel proud of. And the best response was, too long didn't read. Brian Flores has a gun. That's how they're going to stop you.
Honestly, yeah, there's like a lot of like nuance and detail in all this, and then Brian Flores says, "I'm sending 6. Do something about it."
Just absolutely incredible posting. I think we'd be remiss to not have a conversation about JJ McCarthy and Carson Wentz. And we just don't know what's going to happen. One thing that I found interesting that people were freaking out about was JJ McCarthy said he had second opinion on the ankle. And this was Wednesday, 4.5 weeks after he suffered the ankle injury. Why are people freaking out about him saying he had second opinions? Of course he had second opinions 4 weeks ago. Like, why is that all of a sudden this big deal that people are freaking out about? I just don't understand where the media literacy is here, because, like, yeah, they wanted to make sure it was a significant high ankle injury. It's if we would have heard about second opinions 4 weeks ago, I think the panic might have been a little more warranted. But where he's at, he was limited in practice day one. If he's a full participant Thursday, I feel like he's probably going to play on Sunday. But we'll find out later today what that injury report looks like. Like, what's your read on this situation? Like, do you think it's going to be McCarthy or Wentz?
As always, whatever humans are left on Twitter will just continue to fail to interpret language and body language. I genuinely think some of these people have never been in a conversation in the last 500 or so calendar days, like with a real person, and forgot how people talk. So what you're talking about is what JJ McCarthy revealed when he went in front of the media it was on Wednesday, right? That and the true piece of information wasn't that there were second opinions. The word second opinion makes people feel all scary because 2 years ago they heard second opinion on an ACL injury because someone didn't want to accept that it was an ACL injury, and they just think the same thing is happening again. That's not how anything really works, and I don't really care if people are panicking about that. That's on you. If you hear the word second opinion and panic, that's your own fault. For me, it's that he gave a timeline, and we were not given a timeline. I don't know if he was supposed to give a timeline, but he did. But the fact that he said 6 weeks is now going to be burned into everybody's brain. And if it is 5 weeks and he said 6, he's going to get lauded for gutting it out, right? If it's 7 weeks and he said 6 because they didn't want to do the short week, then you're going to hear all this stuff about, oh, what did they do wrong? Was there a setback? Should we fire the staff? And people are going to go crazy because nobody can hear any information and be normal about it ever, which is why teams don't give you. Like the fact that you freak out when you hear second opinion, if you're one of those people, is why Kevin O'Connell won't answer the question about the quarterback. Because you can't say anything in front of the media without everyone freaking the absolute hell out. So everybody just says nothing as much as they can, even in situations where the answer is obvious. So it doesn't matter. But the 6 week timeline would mean week 8, but week 8 is a short week. So it's weird. Plus the fact that he was limited in the first practice. He also said his ankle isn't 100% yet. And Carson Wentz, full participant, non-throwing shoulder. He'll gut it out if he has to. Things are trending toward Carson Wentz playing this week, but we will continue to monitor it week to week. And I think the way that this week has gone, if the Vikings were really truly saying, hey, McCarthy, good try, but those first 2 games were too bad, we're going to put you in Rice, we probably wouldn't be approaching it the same way and giving reps to both quarterbacks and not really knowing what we were going to do. If they had made the decision that it was McCarthy, or if they had made the decision that it was Wentz, they would let McCarthy fully focus on that ankle rather than making any attempt at all to be ready for this game. It's not worth the gamesmanship to take practice reps away from your quarterback who's been here for like 5 weeks, who joined, who didn't have camp. Those reps are too precious to split just to be cute. So I do think that it kind of tells us that eventually they will have McCarthy back, and we really are just watching a high ankle sprain right around at the end of a normal high ankle sprain timeline. And basically what I'm getting at is all of your conspiracy theories are really, really stupid, and you probably shouldn't have fallen for them again. But I say this all the time. I don't know. Same people thought Danielle Hunter was getting traded for a third, and that his contract was not going to happen, and that Justin Jefferson was going to get traded to the Bengals, and that Kevin O'Connell was going to get traded to the Saints. I don't know. Some of you people just buy every piece of bait that you ever see online, and I think you're just kind of gullible. I have beachfront property in Idaho for you.
Hey, it was a 3rd round pick and Mike Gesicki.
That's true. That's true. I'm glad I have this show where I can rant like that, because I can't do that on Locked On Vikings. It's too much. Some of you people are stupid. I'm sorry. Some of you are stupid. It's look in a mirror, okay? Did you believe the wrong thing 600 times about the Vikings? You might be stupid. Be less stupid.
And that is why we do the show, because we want people to be a little smarter and understand things. And hey, we're not going to get everything right, but we put in a lot of effort and time so we can get as much right as possible. Before we go, Luke, I'm very curious about what your thoughts are on the rebuilding the fundamentals of JJ McCarthy. I thought you did a really good job on Locked On Vikings the other day, kind of talking about, oh, well, they don't have a game to play for in week 6, so you can do some of this work, because I don't think people understand that you really can't rebuild mechanics during a game week. You're not focusing on a lot of those things. You're focusing on how are we going to win the football game. So considering, I always remember this, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this. I remember when Tim Tebow came out of college and they were working on shortening his throwing motion. And the one thing that ESPN kept drilling about it was it takes 10,000 reps to make it muscle memory. Yeah, to make it 10,000 hours, that is right? Your new constant. So how much improvement can we actually see with JJ McCarthy's mechanics after a few practices during the bye week? Or is some of that just trying to get him in the flow of things again because of that ankle injury?
So, yeah, if we want to look at the way we talked about mechanics kind of heading into the season, and all the hip rotation stuff, and I made a big deal out of it. And essentially, I think where you and I both landed was, okay, it's definitely a lot better than it was. If you go watch like the Raiders preseason game that JJ got hurt in, you'll see a much different look than you saw even in like that was like how I covered the preseason. The first preseason game where McCarthy played was like, okay, this is still not there, but it's way better. But it's not there. And the thing is, once you get into the rhythm of games, you're not ever working mechanics when you're preparing for the Bears and then preparing for the Falcons. You're not sitting there drilling your little techniques and stuff. You're trying to figure out that, hey, they love to play quarter, half over Justin Jefferson, and here's the quarters beaters, so we're gonna practice those plays because we want those. Like that's what you're doing all week. You don't have time to work mechanics. What your mechanics are going into the season are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at young versions of the quarterbacks we take for granted today, like Josh Allen or Jordan Love, their mechanics headed into that season were what they were. And they didn't change a lot over the course of the season. Then they go into the offseason and you don't have games to prepare for, and you go out with a field with your favorite QB trainer because you're not allowed to talk to your coach, and you try to work on it and you try to get better. McCarthy didn't get that offseason, right? Because he spent most of it in rehab still. And the bye week, because you don't have a game to prepare for, you can work on some of that stuff and maybe get it back together. And I think how those first two games played out with all the pressure and Justin School getting beat and all that, I think McCarthy maybe forgot his base a little bit and sort of stopped playing that way with that ground up way, that nice, calm, collected, just, set your base, make the throw. Everything else is, you don't have to. And I think a little bit, especially early in that Chicago game, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
The first few drives, he was trying to do everything. I remember like the second play, he like cans into something else, and then he like doesn't make, and he tries to scramble, and he was like really trying to manage every single thing all at the same time. And that ground up coaching point, I think, is really good to just say, relax, do what you can do. Make sure you have the basics down properly, instead of trying to manage every little detail on the margins with as much priority as getting your base right. Just play normal quarterback, find a completion. That was the other coaching point that we heard in the media that he would kind of learn from Wentz, right? Hey, look, just find a completion. Just get a completion. It doesn't have to be the greatest play. It doesn't have to be the optimal thing, even necessarily. When you're young like this, completions, move the ball, can't go broke making a profit, right? Yeah. And just kind of play that game, and the power of just get the ball in TJ Hawkinson's hands with a bunch of space. I know it's not the coolest throw, but just dump that thing and let him work forward for a critical 12-yard gain. Those points make a lot of sense to me. And then working on the bye and being like, hey, we can actually get a little bit of work in on the fundamentals. And Kevin O'Connell gets to work it, which the time is so limited in camp, and you don't get to do that in July. You don't get to talk to him in June or in April when he's doing all that work on a high school field somewhere. Players have to do that on their own with their own trainers. You're not allowed. So you actually get some time to do that. And again, I think it matters a lot that what Kevin O'Connell did on the bye was work on McCarthy's fundamentals rather than talk about, okay, well, Carson Wentz is learning the playbook. Let's see if we can use the bye to get him more up to speed. Tells you, I think, what the plan for the rest of the season is.
Yeah. Good stuff, my friend. Let's get producer Dave in here because I know he's going to have a question about our friends, the big roundabellies, because this offensive line is in such an interesting spot. Dave, what do you got?
I was just curious how the Vikings offensive line, however it's composed, and we don't know exactly yet so far this week, how are they going to deal with the Eagles rush?
Sure. So the Eagles have, I think you had a stat on this, Tyler. They've gotten like the vast majority of their pressure up the middle, right?
I'm pretty sure they have. I don't think it was me that had that stat.
Well,
but
wasn't it?
I mean, when you have Jalen Carter, you're going to wreak havoc up the middle. But I'm very interested to find out if he actually plays. He did return to practice. He
said he was playing.
I was told that he's kind of been dealing with the heel injury for the majority of the year. Like something that I think dates back to training camp, if I remember correctly. And it flared up really bad. My conspiracy theory is he didn't want to play at MetLife, which, I mean, why would you? But if he doesn't end up playing against the Vikings on Sunday, or if he's any kind of limited with that heel, plus Jordan Davis, his running mate, is also limited. I believe his isn't a shoulder. So, but he might be the weirdest nose tackle of all time because he's almost 6'7". Like, winning the leverage battle against him isn't as hard as you might think. Like, Garrett Bradbury, I remember whipped him a couple times back in that 2023 game. But if either one of those guys is any kind of limited going into Sunday, that could be a huge benefactor for the Vikings to not only protect either Wentz or McCarthy, but get the run game established, because the edge rushers they're good. They're not great. Jalix Hunt is a second-year guy from Houston Christian, and Nolan Smith
they're like not
looks
happy.
like a safety. Yeah,
it's like not enough. Like they've gotten some from like Jalix Hunt, Azeez Ojulari, and then Josh Uche, but yeah, it's been not enough.
Yeah, they look like Josh Metellus out there. They're skinny. Like, Metellus is a bigger safety. I think he's like 215. Like, Nolan Smith looks like a defensive back. He is small, but he can also bend the arc. And if Brian O'Neill continues to practice, then maybe we'll be in a little bit of a better spot. We don't have to suffer through another Justin School game. One last question, Luke. Who are you starting at center? Blake Brandel or Michael Juergens, and why?
I see the argument for Brandel. I think there is a bit of a cognitive trap that we fall into anytime a backup comes in and plays okay, especially when the starter was anything but a superstar, which is we mistake that for being superior play when really it was superior to different expectations. We didn't expect Blake Brandel to do anything but get absolutely destroyed by like Malik Collins all day long.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect. Still struggles against stunts. Still, the snaps were a little erratic. The protection calls and the communication was a little off sometimes. It wasn't perfect. It was admirable for his expectation, for the circumstance, right? There's a difference between good and good considering your circumstances. And so a player like Juergens who doesn't have those circumstances, therefore may have a higher expectation. And even if he doesn't meet that expectation, that still might be a better option. I kind of think they're going to default to Juergens. That's the depth chart the way it is. And you say, thank you for your service, Blake, but let's make you ready to go. If anybody else isn't able to play, I think you put Brandel in that spot and it becomes a moot point anyways. If, Donovan Jackson isn't ready, if Brian O'Neill isn't ready, I would love to put Brandel in that spot, especially at the tackles instead of Justin School. I think they probably should have done that from day one. But I probably would go with Juergens. That said, I am not nearly as convicted about that as I am about the same kind of question at quarterback. If it does end up being Brandel, I won't be surprised one bit, and I would totally get it.
Mm-hmm. My big thing is with a guy like Brandel is I think you're going to take away too much of his value by forcing him to play the one position, because he might be one of the more valuable offensive linemen in the league, in the fact that, hey, you have a guy making $3.5 million a year where he can play all 5 positions. And do you want to have your best backup be forced into a starting role, where I think Juergens has shown enough to where you want to give him a little bit more of a run to see what you really have, especially because of this Ryan Kelly contract. Kelly may not be here next year, even if he's like able to go, because
super cuttable contract. Yeah.
Super cuttable contract, plus another 2 concussions that makes 5 in his career. He continues to be injury prone, even though like you can argue that, hey, concussions were more of a thing of the past and not like a super sustainable trend as far as what you look at his injury.
Once you have your third one, though, it's a real problem.
Yeah. Does he want to play another year? And I think you need to see what you have in Juergens to figure out, okay, we thought this guy was going to be a starter when we drafted him. Is he going to actually be one? And you need a bigger sample size of that. So I think that they'll go Juergens. But look, Brandel's solid.
He was solid. Like he acquitted himself well enough to make you ask this question. And that's quite the testament to how he played. But just asking the question doesn't answer the question, which is, again, a thing we do too much. Hey, it's okay to ask, but just because you're asking about Brandel doesn't mean we're all saying put Brandel in. We're just considering it, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if I agree with you about like information gathering. I don't think you need to do information gathering until you're like mathematically eliminated and you're at the end of the season and you're seeing what you got in the young guys. But like, rather, you did a lot of preparation this year with Juergens at center. A lot of the other players know what it's like with Juergens at center because Ryan Kelly missed a bunch of camp too, so Juergens played those. Mm-hmm. They don't. The other players aren't necessarily as familiar with what it's like with Brandel at center. One singular game performance is a pretty good argument, but I don't think it overcomes like a lot of stuff happened out of our eye shot that relied on somebody who knows the position, who has been thinking about playing that all year. And again, Brandel did well on the fly, but there's a lot of disadvantages that come with that might not be worth it to how Donovan Jackson plays or Will Fry's next to him or if Brian O'Neill plays. So I think the more I'm talking it out, the more I'm leaning toward it should be Juergens. Mm-hmm. And it's just really nice to have Brandel there in case. And hey, if maybe Juergens on a short leash, right? Like maybe you can do something like that. We're going to put you in, you're going to do your thing. But if you're messing up a bunch, this dude played okay, keep it in mind. But I don't know if I don't know if the team is thinking that way anyways. Because to Davey OG's point in the chat, Brandel may be a better center than a guard or tackle. Didn't Wes Phillips kind of say that? Like, oh, maybe we found his position, right? Like in a halfway joking way. So maybe they do that. But like the prep you do in camp and throughout each week matters. And when you change something as fundamentally as who's at center, when you change something that foundational, you throw away a lot of that prep and put yourself at a different kind of disadvantage. And I would say it's the same logic with Wentz too.
When I talked about the information gathering, I don't necessarily think that should be your number one factor, but I do think if you are looking at these guys and like, okay, we're kind of even on both. We kind of know what Blake Brandel is overall as an offensive lineman, but we have a lot less information on Juergens. I would use that as like a deciding factor. Like, okay, let's see what we've got in Juergens and kind of let it ride. And I also agree with you on the short leash to where if Juergens just all of a sudden goes out there and shits the bed for a half, throw in Brandel and let's keep that rolling. I don't think you should use it as your number one point where, okay, you're in the room and you're talking about who should be the starter. Oh, we need more information on Juergens. I think that's really bad process. But if you're doing the whole like beans thing on a scale and you it's leveled out, then I think you go with Juergens because you want to continue to see what you have. Because at that point, what is going to be your deciding factor to where we need to figure out which guy it is. And I'd like to see what the center who worked with the ones in camp and who was a constant at the position, I want to see what he's got. And I want to see if we can find another Matt Burke or John Sullivan, somebody who can be an anchor on the offensive line for a number of years, because centers are often undervalued in the marketplace when it comes to the NFL draft.
Yeah, and I just don't think they look at Juergens as an unknown right now. They have had him in the building for 2 years. Chris Cooper has looked at him. Chris Cooper's practiced. They know what he is. And I don't think they're sitting there trying to unlock scouting traits like it's Madden. These dudes take up the whole show. Yeah, man.
That's the point.
That's what a podcast is. Have you ever listened to one? He wants to hear from Dave. Yeah, what do you think, Dave, about this?
Hey,
I was going to say there's continuity. There's a reason for status quo, but what do you think?
Brandel, if he indeed found a position at center, he's also a 6th-round pick.
Brandel is a 6th-round pick from 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's still young, relatively.
How old is Blake Brandel? He's on his second contract.
Yeah.
28.
$9.5 million.
Yeah. So you probably got 3-4 years before you start declining at O-line.
So it's a good problem to have to figure out which of these young guys, whether it be Brandel or Juergens, to play at center.
For sure. I think I think they'll go with Jurgens, and I kind of like, we're not sure Brian O'Neill is playing. We're not sure Donovan Jackson is playing. This whole thing could still get solved for them.
Now, one thing we are sure of is on my Scoling with Friends episode, talking with Aiden Reed from Philly, is that the fans there are highly upset that with the new OC, Kevin Petula, that they are very, very predictive. That when they line up in shotgun, they're passing. When they line up under center, they're running. And I said, well, if he's that predictive, then Brian Flores is going to eat on the defense. Do you guys see that on your research?
That's what Louis told me too, that like the predictability of the offense has been a big problem, and it has prevented them from being able to really get things going. And maybe that's why Saquon Barkley hasn't gone the same way. What I will add to that is I would love to see Saquon actually, I can probably pull this up right now. Like how Saquon Barkley is on shotgun versus under center runs. Because if their zone running game is bad, that's why they're doing that. And it's not the OC's. Then the OC can't do anything, right? You can't call the play. You suck at running.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they need. The problem with Hurts is he's just a limited passer. He's a limited quarterback. But what he is good at is what they built the offense around his entire tenure and why they won a Super Bowl. And they won something like 18 or 20 straight games. Like, this is still a good football team. It is still a good offense, but they're kind of just getting in their own way, and their coaching staff got raided this offseason. So it's building guys back up, and this is why coordinators matter so much. If you have to replace them constantly, it can really mess with your offense. So we'll see if this dude has the juice, because they had Brian Johnson in there for a year after their Super Bowl appearance. It did not work. They cut ties. Kellen Moore came in, won a Super Bowl. So we'll see if Petullo has any kind of chops, but it'll take some time. He's a first-time coordinator. Like, it always takes time for those guys.
And it's been a pattern with the Eagles that the coordinator that comes in after they win the NFC, like because somebody always leaves, right? So whoever replaces the coordinator that gets hired away for the head coaching job is ousted fast, and then it's the next guy that comes in that actually ends up getting traction.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Anything else before we take off?
We got.
I'll get that under center. I'll get that shotgun under center stat on Locked On Vikings tomorrow.
Cool.
Hell yeah. Make sure you go listen to that. Make sure you check out The Real Forno Show Thursday night tonight, 6:05 Central Time, where we're going to be talking a little more in depth about this game from other perspectives. So there's not a ton of double up here. So we'll be back next week at some point, because the Vikings have a Thursday game. So it might get a little wonky, but we'll have a show for you. And then we'll have a show for you early next week too, or the following week. And look, we're in the thick of it, and this is a very fun time of year. Make sure you go check out all of Luke Braun's work at Locked On Vikings and patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL, where he does all those really cool videos, including 2 hours of Carson Wentz. If you really want to be a fun degenerate,
it did happen to
me.
You're
here. So you do want to be a fun degenerate. Go check that out. And we will see you guys later tonight. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and share this episode with your friends and even your enemies. We'd love it. Thanks for watching Vikings First and SKOL. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network, and we appreciate each and every one of you. SKOL.